You may think we are beyond being further shocked by the carnage and chaos in Syria, but once in a while an image does stop us all in our tracks. Today we had one such. This footage of 5-year-old Omran Dakhnish sitting dazed in the back of an ambulance has flashed around the world. But moving as it may be, is there any chance it will actually help stop the slaughter? Also on News at 10 tonight. Far away in Rio, the Brownlee brothers demonstrate that two is company, especially when you are far out in front of the pack. The shocking price of being black, how race appears to determine earnings even when two people have exactly the same degree. And everything you need to know about pokenomics. What is that, you may say? We will explain.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. We have reported often on this programme on the horrors of the siege of Aleppo in Syria. And given that people are dying there every day, often in very large numbers, you might argue it's odd to focus on a single piece of footage involving one child. But it's a truth of modern history that individual images sometimes do have a disproportionate impact. One can think of that picture of Aylan Kurdi a year ago, dead on a beach in Turkey for want of a life jacket as he and his family sought a better life in Europe. Well, in the same vein today was this image of 5-year-old Omran Dakhnish in the back of an ambulance. He looks confused, and well he might, for what kind of life is this for him, really? It was another very bad day in Aleppo, and his was far from the only family affected. But the real question is, will images like this actually ever change anything on the ground there?
There are many front lines in Syria's war. Last night, Omran Dakhnish's home became one of them. Attacked from the skies, it collapsed upon him. Somehow he survived, but at what cost? His hair matted with the dust from his home, his face caked in his own blood. He's left alone in the ambulance. There's no one to hold his hand here, and at 5 years old he doesn't even cry. He just pats his little face and wipes the blood on the seat as he tries to work out what's happened. He isn't alone for long. The tragedy is that those who keep him company are just as young and equally traumatised. This part of eastern Aleppo is a stronghold of anti-Assad sentiment. And these airstrikes are viewed here as retribution because rebels broke through a government siege 10 days ago. An informant had warned that a jet had taken off from one of the Russian bases. 2 minutes later, there were 2 airstrikes. They were 2 of many over the past 48 hours. This footage was filmed for ITV News as one of Aleppo's hospitals dealt with the aftermath of another attack. The images are utterly awful. The sounds of children in agony are perhaps even more disturbing. We are told they were hit by shrapnel when a cluster bomb was dropped in the street close to where they live. 100,000 children are believed to live in the besieged city, but with no route in or out. It is impossible to independently verify how these injuries were caused. However, the agony they cause needs no verification. The desperation of medical staff is evident. That's why they want a ceasefire and the creation of a UN humanitarian corridor to get most of the injured out.
We don't want any aid. We don't want medical supplies. We want this bombing and chilling to stop. That's the only thing that we want.
These scenes are not unusual in Aleppo, and yet it is the silent injuries, the harm done to young minds, which will likely linger longer than the scars. What words can you whisper to your child to calm amid such trauma? Put yourselves in our place, this father says. These are kids. Don't you feel anything? Can't the world wake up? Where is your conscience? Our blood is pouring in the streets. Little Omran is the latest child to be held up as an example of Syria's plight. But perhaps the great tragedy is that there are many more, too dreadfully harmed for us to show.
Well, we heard there from an obviously overworked and frustrated surgeon who said he just wants the bombing to stop. I spoke to Dr. Hamza from the studio here a short while ago and began by asking him what his daily life entailed now.
Actually, we wake up every day on the side of a rocket or a missile, keep waiting in the emergency room or inside the hospital, waiting for injuries to come. We are expecting a massacre any time of the day or night, of course. And in spite of all of that, we are expecting ourselves in the hospital to be attacked at any moment also. So that's what we are living each day. We're just waiting for somebody has been hit to enter our hospital, or being afraid of being hit ourselves.
We often get the sense that children may be being disproportionately affected by this siege. Is that true, do you think?
Of course. Actually, we have injured children, or most of the time. Unfortunately, there are no gardens, and there are no schools, and there are no shelter for these children. So most of the children inside of Aleppo city are playing in front of their house, and as they're children, so they have to play.
Your hospital is a target, of course. We know that the regime is deliberately targeting hospitals, or so it appears. But your home was also hit this week.
When you are inside of Aleppo city, that you have signed a contract with death, that it may take your lives at any moment. That's the deal inside of Aleppo city. That's the contract.
Dr. Hamza speaking from Aleppo earlier, while Emma Murphy joins me now. Emma, very powerful footage, powerful testimony from the doctor. I think the truth we all know is we've been over this over and over again, and they're paying the price for the fact that nothing ever seems to change. Is there any prospect of anything changing anytime soon, in your view?
It feels incredibly futile this evening. There was a meeting this morning at the UN that was abandoned after only 8 minutes because the special envoy basically said, I can't see any progress. We've been trying to get some kind of aid convoy in. We haven't got them in for a month, and it's just hopeless. And he suspended it for a month. So it gives you an idea just how frustrated people feel in the highest levels. This was what the special envoy had to say this morning.
Not one single convoy in 1 month has reached any of the humanitarian besieged areas. Not one single convoy. And why? Because one thing, fighting.
UN is very often in this position in conflicts like this, isn't it? It basically can't do anything. It's absolutely toothless. Fair, would you say?
I think that is fair. I think that, clearly there is a great wish there that something could be done, but there's been a great wish for a great many years, and really there hasn't been any progress. The situation has just carried on declining. That's why we're seeing images, as we've seen in those terrible pictures from Aleppo over the last 2 weeks, really, particularly the last 48 hours, with the airstrikes that are said on the ground to be the result of regime and Russian attacks. But that would obviously be questioned by those who actually support the regime. Now, what the UN is asking for is some kind of ceasefire, maybe a 48-hour cessation to allow a humanitarian convoy through, and also to try and get some kind of dialogue going. Now, this evening, the Russians have said that they will do everything they can. They will also work with the regime to try and put that into place, and they expect the Americans to do the same. But bear in mind the pressures that there are in that area. You have so many different players in this fight that really trying to bring any level of control over them is virtually impossible. It's what we've seen time and time again. There is big talk and then very little action. And I suppose what really struck me today was when I looked at those pictures of that little boy sat in the back of the ambulance on his own, a kind of iconic image, which the people that we were speaking to in Aleppo today were slightly mystified about the fact that it had gained all this opinion in the West. But what really struck me was that image that was so similar to little Alan Kurdi, who washed up on that beach in Turkey. Everybody said then, this has to be a game changer, something must change. It hasn't, and I doubt that these images today will make any difference either.
Emma, thank you. I guess the truth is the doctors in Aleppo see pictures like that every single day, all day, and perhaps we should show them more. Now, just to update you on Omran before we move on, he is back with his family tonight and he is safe. Well, let's move a world away now, in every sense, to the Olympics in Rio. And it was tempting to wonder if Johnny Brownlee ever feels like screaming at the fact that he so often finishes second to his elder brother, Alistair. But the sight of him coming over the line today behind his brother again and immediately lying down next to him and reaching for his hand was one of many heartwarming images from these games. And of course, the night is yet young. We can reasonably expect Usain Bolt to stroll or amble, saunter, pick your verb, over the line to claim another gold in the 200 metres in the early hours of the morning.
The Olympic triathlon champion for the second time.
Not quite brothers in arms, they had nothing left to give, but still a special bond at a very special time, there for all to see. Alistair retaining his title, Johnny mere seconds behind for an astonishing family 1-2. There are few Olympic cities easier on the eye than Rio, a natural amphitheatre, and an Olympic stage the Brownlee brothers were set to dominate, even more so than in 2012. Like shoals of angry sharks thrashing through the surf, the Brownlees kept pace with the pack. Once on the bike, they made their move, driving the leading group and opening up a huge gap ahead of those trailing behind them. In the 10K run, they were commanding. Alistair, so much so, he had the luxury of celebrating long before the finish of this grueling test of strength and stamina.
The Olympics is far more significant than anything else, so we've trained really hard for it. We've prepared, together, done so many hard sessions together over the years, and to pull that off was just brilliant. Crossing the line, my first reaction was obviously I was very, very tired, and the next reaction was we've done it. It's been a lifelong dream to get first and second in the Olympic Games, and it's very, very special. I think we both realise and appreciate how special it is to be able to prepare and train so hard together and push each other on day in, day out, and then work as a kind of team during the race.
The least surprising British gold today came from Hannah Mills and Saskia Clark. Such was their lead, they knew they only had to finish their race to secure the title. They've been waiting a couple of days to do just that. At last, the champagne can finally come off the ice. Olympic history was made on the badminton court earlier. A wrong umpire call, a British challenge.
It's in!
And Marcus Ellis and Chris Langridge secured Team GB's first ever men's doubles medal, beating their Chinese rivals for a bronze. The magic touch eluded BMX rider Liam Phillips, though. His Rio dream came to an end after crashing out in his quarter-final heats. A painful and rare piece of bad fortune for Team GB on an otherwise golden day.
So I wonder if anyone gets around that BMX course in one piece. Now, Steve, what's been going on there tonight?
Well, at the moment, we're looking ahead to some more British medal hopes. We're quite confident. Behind me, Jade Jones earlier on. She managed to qualify for her final in the Taekwondo. Her final happening around 2 a.m. your time, but of course, because she's in the final, she's guaranteed at least a silver. She was, of course, you may remember, the youngest ever, sorry, not the youngest ever, but the youngest gold medalist at London 2012. And then Nicola Adams in the boxing is in a very similar position. She's managed to get through to her final. She's defending her title from London 2012, so she is guaranteed, of course, at least a silver too. So after what was something of a lull yesterday, maybe at least the medal count is rising again today and could rise still further later.
Steve, we've talked about Usain Bolt often enough, and you kind of sense he's got to the point of being not only iconic but incredibly important to athletics as a whole. I suppose there's no doubt that he's going to win tonight, and just how is he, in your view, so superior?
Yes, we don't think he's going to lose tonight. Stranger things have happened, but he runs in the final of the 200 metres. If you saw him qualifying for that final, chatting and laughing on his way in his heat, you wouldn't expect him to lose. If he does win, of course, that means he's one win away from an incredible treble. That's his dream. That's what he really wants. And I think it's fair to say that most people really want him to do that. To answer your question, you only have to look at the athletics stadium here in Rio de Janeiro. When he's not competing, it is, if you're being fair, well, it's almost empty. When he is there, it's pretty full. That is the power of the man. Athletics is going through a difficult time at the moment, doping, controversies of all sorts. Athletics really needs Usain Bolt at the moment, and when he's gone, athletics will really miss him.
OK, Steve, thank you very much indeed. So time now for our regular check on Team GB's place in the medal table. And as you can see, we are still there in second place between the United States, about 1 gold still ahead of China, and with plenty more still to play for. Now, to an altogether more bizarre story from the Olympics. Brazilian police have confirmed that 4 US Olympic swimmers made up their story about being robbed in Rio. Gold medalist Ryan Lochte and 3 others were actually involved in a dispute with staff at a petrol station. Security guards there said the swimmers had caused damage and that they'd simply demanded the athletes pay for it. A spokesman for the Games downplayed the incident, saying the 4 were just having fun and made a mistake. But tonight, police are still considering whether to charge them.
From gold medal glory to national disgrace, Ryan Lochte's downfall has been swift. His account of a crime that never was has put him and 3 fellow US swimmers in deep water. Lochte claimed that after their celebratory night out, their taxi ride home was halted by armed robbers posing as police.
The guy pulled out his gun, he cocked it, put it to my forehead, he said, "Get down," and I was like, I put my hands up, I was like, whatever. He took our money, he took my wallet.
This is the drama unfolding, but the action caught on security camera is very different. Police say the swimmers smashed a bathroom door. A guard stopped them leaving. 3 of them are seen sitting on the floor. 2 raise their hands in surrender.
And so it seems they weren't the victims after all of one of these city's notoriously violent gangs. Instead, they were using Rio's tough reputation to cover for a row at this petrol station. It was a lie, say the police, and it hasn't endeared them to local people one bit.
2 of the team, Jack Conger and Gunnar Bentz, were hauled off a flight home late last night to answer a barrage of questions.
Tell us, where you robbed? Was there a robbery?
Lochte is safely back in the US already, but the Games organisers have come to their defence.
Let's give these kids a break. Sometimes you take actions that you later regret. They had fun, they made a mistake, it's part of life goes on. Let's go.
In the Olympic city, the security threat is all too real. Police are angry then for having to investigate what they call a fabricated crime. John Ray, News at 10, Rio.
We reported here last night on claims the government was about to announce a heavily watered-down obesity strategy. Well, today it was launched and ministers denied it had been downgraded, but it was still widely condemned for not being ambitious enough. The TV chef and healthy eating campaigner Jamie Oliver called it disappointing and underwhelming, and others said it had let down a generation of children.
There were plenty of calories burnt today criticising the government, as dozens of organisations complained that the plan to tackle obesity had been drastically slimmed down itself. With a third of children now fighting their weight, the government's swerved demands to limit the ads they see and the sugar they eat, with no extra regulation of industry.
I think there's much more that could have been done. But in the long term, some of this will make a difference. So like trying to take some of the sugar out of products over a long period of time. But unfortunately, there's no compulsion. So, I would like to see much tougher regulation backing this up.
When a tax on sugary drinks was announced in March, many hoped more action would follow.
I think this was a big, bold, brave, unconventional move.
But today, Jamie Oliver wrote, "I'm in shock. With this disappointing and frankly underwhelming strategy, the health of our future generations remains at stake." Last year, the NHS in England spent over £5 billion treating illnesses related to weight, and the problem's getting worse. While around a quarter of adults were obese in 2014, that's projected to rise to half of us by 2050, with the cost doubling to almost £10 billion a year.
We have the highest rates of obesity in Western Europe. We really needed a strategy that would commit practical, targeted changes that would involve industry, and we needed that to set out a very clear mandate for how many people or what reductions in childhood obesity we might see in the next 5 years, and we've not got that.
This isn't quite the strategy we were promised when David Cameron was living here. If his government started the project, well, Theresa May seems to have finished it off. In fact, the Prime Minister's on holiday right now, along with the Health Secretary, leaving others to defend this 10-page plan.
Those things taken together will be the most ambitious reformulation programme that any developed country has ever tried to do. So to say that's not ambitious, to say that's not a big ask of our industry, our manufacturers, our retailers, is not the case. It is a big ask, but we think we can do it.
Interesting, the only defence came from that former health minister. Many suspect the bigger powers just aren't up for this particular fight. Paul Brand, News at 10, Westminster.
Still to come on tonight, News at 10. Pokenomics, the billions that will be made on the technology that makes Pokemon Go. And why should it be London? Campaigners say Team GB's victory parade should be outside the capital, but where?
To move things just a little bit further out of London all the time and bring it here and let people from the south come up and have a look at us up here as well.
Coming up after this very short break. Welcome back. Racial inequality in Britain is entrenched and alarming, according to the biggest ever study of its effects. A review for the Equality and Human Rights Commission has found that despite decades of effort, ethnic minorities are still more likely to be poor, to be unemployed, and even to be murdered. More black students are, it's true, earning university degrees, but when they do, their average salary is still a staggering 23% lower than white graduates. The Commission says the government needs to come up with a new plan for a fairer Britain.
If you're black, you're 4 times more likely to be stopped and searched by the police.
Black workers with degrees are paid 23% less on average than white workers with degrees.
Race remains the most commonly recorded motivation of hate crime.
These are just a few of the facts underlying today's report. Even in a multicultural city like Birmingham, they have a serious impact. Zeddy Lowell graduated this summer. She found a job at youth engagement agency Beat Freaks, but felt she had to get higher grades at university.
I realised kind of being there that I had to work a lot harder in order to kind of secure my future, because kind of applying to university, I already thought my future would kind of be secured.
Today's report said that black graduates who were in work were earning 23% less than their white equivalent colleagues. What does that say to you?
Just hearing that statistic, that is horrendous, but I feel like I'm not surprised.
We want justice! Young activists from Black Lives Matter have recently taken more militant action to emphasise what the report calls entrenched racism.
What it's highlighting is that nothing has actually changed. We still have the socioeconomic factors, we still have the poor housing, the disproportionality in the criminal justice system, we have high levels of unemployment, high levels of educational unachievement, and the list goes on.
Dear Birmingham, that doesn't even sound right. Yo, Brum, that's the kind of thing that I would write. That's not because you're not dear to me or always here for me, but I have heard your bark and more than once I felt your bites.
Part-time Birmingham poet and full-time teacher Casey Bailey believes most racism is subconscious.
In a system where the majority of powerful positions are held by probably white and males, you'll find that black people might be discriminated against, not necessarily because somebody's sitting in their office going, I don't like black people, but they connect more naturally with someone who they see as being like themselves.
The report wants a comprehensive strategy, even a dedicated Secretary of State to defeat racism and build a fairer society. Juliet Bremner, News at 10, Birmingham.
A-level results came out today. You may have heard the cheering from those teenagers who were happy with their results, but there were slightly fewer who achieved the top grades. For the 5th year running, the proportion of A-star and A grades was down by 0.1% at 25.8%. But despite that, a record number of students have been offered university places, 424,000 in fact. That is up by 3%. Now, I'm joined by a rather unusual guest, which players of the popular new game Pokemon Go will instantly recognise as a Pikachu. The rest of you might be surprised to learn that creatures like this are all around you. Yes, they are. The game puts these virtual animals in real places, but they're only visible through a smartphone or a tablet. Have I lost you already? Hold on a moment. It is called augmented reality, and it's not just for games. Medical and marketing uses are also being explored, with the technology expected to be worth a staggering £36 billion by 2025. Yes, really.
It's the game that everyone's talking about. Pokemon Go has broken records as the most downloaded app ever and made its creators an estimated £150 million in its first month. British businesses are cashing in on the back of its popularity, like this restaurant, which pays to attract Pokemon characters for its customers to catch.
We're paying up to £100 a day on the game, and we're finding that for every pound we're spending, we're getting about £100 back.
This popular game uses something called augmented reality, which superimposes digital images onto what we see.
Investors are excited about the prospects of this new technology. Since the success of Pokemon Go, Goldman Sachs has upgraded what it values the augmented reality sector is worth.
They forecast its value to reach £27 billion by 2025. That's over 3 times the £8 billion it projected only a few months ago. It's easy to see why augmented reality may transform our lives. Analysts see it as becoming as commonplace as the mobile phone.
Overlaying information over the real world is a really, really useful tool. And as we're able to do that better and make it more useful, then people are going to start to want to use it more and more.
Aside from gaming, the technology is already being used by advertisers and marketeers to encourage us to buy more of their products. With the addition of headsets, the experience becomes more immersive and potentially more useful.
I just wanted to see how actually that desk looks like in this space.
Imagine you want to buy new furniture.
You also see if there's a chair.
You could see it full size in your living room, and there's no need for a tape measure.
Let me just see if I can measure the distance. 160 centimeters. I think that should do.
But much hyped technologies don't always succeed.
How can you be sure this technology is going to take off?
Well, up until recently, augmented reality as a technology has been hugely expensive, something that most people on the street would not be able to afford. If you remember those headsets like Google Glass, they were hundreds and hundreds of pounds, but now millions and millions of us that own smartphones, just everyday smartphones, can actually access augmented reality through very simple apps.
But a world augmented by others means a world in which others determine what it is we see. Not all of us will want that. Narina Hertz, News at 10.
And Narina has more on how Pokemon Go and other augmented reality apps could change your life. So go to our website, itv.com/news. Do go. It's kind of fascinating. And finally, a debate has erupted over how best to welcome back Team GB's Olympic heroes. The default option for this sort of thing is, of course, a parade through central London, but most of our medal winners, you may have noticed, are from outside the capital. So, with apologies to George Osborne, is this a job for the Northern powerhouse?
Our Olympic stars were so successful 4 years ago, a victory parade was inevitable. Thousands thronged the streets of the capital, where of course the games were held. So surely another parade is on the cards. But that's not the issue.
I think the question is where the parade ought to be, because obviously our Olympic athletes come from all over the country, and I don't think we should assume, unlike London 2012, that the parade will necessarily be in London.
And it's hard to argue against a North of England party for Team GB. Incredibly, 8 of our medalists are from Lancashire and Greater Manchester. Bolton alone can boast 3 gold medals, thanks to local boy Jason Kenny. Kenny, in the glasses, arrived back in the northwest today, and a parade would be perfect through the Georgian architecture and wide streets of his hometown.
I think the time's right, isn't it? Just to move things just a little bit further out of London all the time and bring it here and let people from the south come up and have a look at us up here as well and celebrate with us. We know how to do it.
And Yorkshire hasn't been outdone either. Another 10 medals there. And Leeds could make a good case for hosting an Olympics party, with 5 of our medalists, including today's heroes, the Brownlee brothers, hailing from the city. After all, Yorkshire hosted a spectacular first stage in the Tour de France 2 years ago. And in Leeds, those watching the Brownlees race today gave it the thumbs up.
I think so. I mean, you look at the passion Yorkshire has for sport, the Tour de France, the triathlon that was here in this very square 2 months ago.
You can't just always just get down to London, but you can come here. I mean, we're from Barnsley, so it's only half an hour train. We definitely come.
There's no doubt a northern parade would be hugely popular, and very few would stick their head in the sand. Ian Payne, News at 10.
Looking ahead to what's coming up tomorrow. Great Britain's women's hockey team take on the Netherlands in the gold medal match, and we'll find out if there will be a post office strike. Workers have been voting on whether to strike over Crown post offices being turned into franchises. That's it. I'm going to go home and watch Usain Bolt stroll over the line. Until then,